Welcome to the Trading Psychology and Mindset Podcast. My name is Ash Plaisted. I'm your host as always. I'm an active trader myself. I've been trading and coaching other traders for the past 25 years. And I am also a very curious student of human nature, how our minds work. And understanding how our brain and mind work was the pivotal shift that changed my trading life. And understanding this is fundamental to every trader breaking through to consistent profitability, which is what each and every one of us wants, of course. Now, this podcast is all about answering that question and providing real, tangible, and actionable steps you can take to train the mind you bring to trading into the mind you need for trading success. Hugging the cactus, embracing the things we like least about ourselves, and why doing this might be the shift you need to turn your trading around. Let's head over and get started. So hugging the cactus, what's that all about? I want to tell you a story. You might be familiar with this, but it's really, really important. And then I want to tie it into trading. Now, several years ago, Robert Downey Jr. took a huge risk when, upon receiving an award at the 2011, I think it was, American Cinematic Awards ceremony, he asked the audience to forgive Mel Gibson. Now, you may recall that Mel Gibson had a meltdown of sorts. It's probably 15 to 16 years ago now that led to a whole bunch of ugly in his life, suffering from alcoholism, a manic depression, and a whole host of other things. He'd gone from holding the status of one of Hollywood's favorites, one of its most beloved, to one of its most hated. From spewing hateful and homophobic rants to being accused of domestic violence, Mel Gibson had, in 2 words, lost it. Enter Robert Downey Jr. Now, most of you know him or you know of him, and most of you know of his struggle with drug addiction. There was a point in his life in which he couldn't get any acting job, time in which he was essentially hireable. Not only was he dealing with that stigma, he was battling day to day and hour by hour the demon of addiction. Yet Mel Gibson took him under his wing, first as a friend and then as a boss. He hired him for a role that Mel was meant to have, and subsequently he and Rob developed a friendship as Mel poured into Rob what no one else would. And Mel knew Rob's pain, and this is the really, really guts of the story. Mel Gibson knew Rob's pain. He had been there, done that when it came to the rejection by the masses. He had said things that were horrific, basically concerning people of all shapes and sizes, sexual orientation, and especially Jewish people. He had battled addiction, and his actions had a professional and personal ripple effect in his life. It's fair to say those actions were, by any reasonable assessment, horrific. Now, after sobering up and doing his best to make amends to get his life together, he decided to use his pain to help others. He reached out to help Rob, and isn't it funny how we can flip our past mistakes on their heads when we own our mistakes and then use what we've learned to help someone else go through a similar problem? Now, I want to go to Rob Downey Jr.'s speech from that night and quote it directly. Rob said these famous words in that speech at that award ceremony in 2011, and they're words about leaning into your pain. They're words about owning your issues and doing something about them. But they're also words about forgiveness, forgiving others, and especially forgiving yourself. So, Rob Downey Jr. said the following: I asked Mel to present this award for me for a reason. When I couldn't get sober, he told me not to give up and encouraged me to find my faith. It didn't have to be his or anyone else's faith, as long as it was rooted in forgiveness. And I couldn't get hired, so he cast me in the lead of a movie that was actually developed for him. He kept a roof over my head and food on the table, and most importantly said that if I accepted responsibility for my wrongdoing and embraced that part of my soul that was ugly, hugging the cactus he calls it, he said that if I hugged the cactus long enough, I'd become a man. I did, and it worked. All he asked in return was that someday I help the next guy in some small way. And now, it's reasonable to assume at the time he didn't imagine the next guy would be him, or that someday was tonight. So anyway, on this special occasion and in light of the recent holidays, including Columbus Day, I would ask that you join me, unless you are completely without sin, in which case you picked the wrong expletive industry, in forgiving my friend his trespasses and offering him the same clean slate you have me, allowing him to continue his great and ongoing contribution to our collective art without shame. He's hugged the cactus long enough. End quote. So I want you to think of that phrase, hug the cactus. It has the same meaning as lean into your pain or embrace the suck, and it hurts. And that's the point. It's about taking the intense pain now, facing that pain and taking it now so you can reduce the stranglehold that pain has moving forward. That's really, really important. Take the pain now so you can reduce the ongoing pain and risk. And this has a lot of resonance in trading, which I'll get to in a minute. Releasing emotional pain from the past is a big part of achieving peak mental fitness for trading, and probably peak mental fitness for most things in life, but particularly trading. Hugging the cactus means going to the deepest pit of your emotional pain. It's that place in which you don't want to face your demons and owning the darkness. It means that you can allow someone else into your darkness so that you can leave it behind and move forward. And once we do that, it then becomes our job to pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and get back into the arena called life and trading and fight. And we can't do that on our own. We need help. We all need help to do that. Now, there's no cactus too big or too prickly for we traders to embrace, right? But we have to hug the cactus. We have to own it, confess it, and then walk in faith, knowing that we are on the right path. And I use the word faith, denominational way. Faith in yourself, confidence in yourself, that you have faced your darkest fears and moving forward. Then we take what we've learned and we help someone else. That's how lives are changed. Now, I want to talk for a moment about mindset reflexology, which is my proprietary brain training technology. And one of its key components involves rewiring our mind's relationship with past mistakes and past emotional pain. And we need to do this so that in the heat of battle that we call trading for a living, our mind is much less likely to associate the now risk of emotional pain that is triggered during the act of trading when we put real money on the line to the risk of an uncertain outcome. That is the now risk of emotional pain with all that past emotional pain. This is how the brain works. The brain, when it faces real or perceived threat of pain, will always immediately look to associate it with some pain from the past. Now, hugging the cactus frees us up to have a fighting chance of using our highly evolved rational mind to make good decisions in that hot fire of real life trading. And that is what mindset reflexology does. It helps heal and move on from past emotional pain so that when we're trading, the brain doesn't associate it with it anymore and trigger our fight-flight impulse. I just want to talk for a moment about my own personal case here because I think it will give you some insight into where this comes from for me. So in my case, I was at a very low ebb, distraught over the death of my much-loved mother from cancer. And whilst this had been playing out and then happened, it concurred with going backwards financially with my trading. It also coincidentally was about the same time or the same period that's referred to in the Mel and Rob Downey Jr. story. It's around 2010, 2011. Now, I was so close to giving up, so close. But at the very 11th hour, 1 minute to midnight, I was sagely pointed in the right direction. And that direction was mindfulness, which ultimately took me to facing my darkest fear. Those really deeply buried emotions of grief and loss, which I'd internalized and which I had naively thought I could avoid or sort of deal with by devoting myself to trading, by getting lost in my work, so to speak. What a huge mistake that was, but it's all I knew at the time. Now, mindfulness, which is starting to properly work on my mental fitness, took me into hugging my personal cactus, right? Which for me was that absolute deepest pain. Now, I put a lot of my subsequent and ongoing success down to hugging my cactus at that moment. There's been other times and other things that I've worked my way through, but that was the big one for me. That's the one that took me in the right direction. Now, I use it as my motivator, and this is the big shift. Instead of past emotional pain and mistakes and trauma being something to avoid and something to see as a negative or a limiting belief, by actually hugging that cactus and working your way through it, it becomes a motivator. It becomes a powerful force for good. So I'd ask you traders, what is your cactus? What mistakes, what emotional pain is sitting deep within you that you can work on embracing? Now, I know that that's not easy. It can be very difficult and very challenging. And if you need some help or a push, I really, really urge you to seek help. Reach out to me, reach out to someone you can trust and speak to, and help get some guidance through this process on how to hug the cactus. And just like Mel Gibson and Robert Downey Jr. said, if you've been through the fires of hell and you've gotten the help you needed to come out the other side, you have a responsibility to pay it forward. So for me personally, this is why I coach traders. This is why I do a podcast and write newsletters and post on social media, because it's my way of paying it forward. I enjoy helping other traders to hug their cactus and overcome their trading blocks. So thank you for listening to this episode. Whether you are just thinking about trading, you're a beginner trader, or you're down the track further, you could be a more experienced trader or a proprietary trader. I thank you for joining me on this episode. I truly hope that you've got insight, you've got some learning, and you've got some actionable advice on how to move forward and hug your cactus. Take this into your own life. Take it into your trading. And I'll see you on the next episode of the Trading Psychology and Mindset Podcast.